But yeah, hidden cameras, they can hide them in anything anymore.
Yeah.
So be careful when you're going through properties. I guess the lesson is be careful when you're going through properties. Don't divulge a lot of information, especially, pretend that they're walking around the house with you, right? Because if you're in an open house or if you're going to a showing and you just see a house and you come out and there's another group sitting there, you're not going to start talking about the house, right? I always tell my clients, like, don't say anything, right? Because you're giving away all your secrets. So think about that when you're walking through the property as well.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt, that is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about sellers that are spying on home buyers. We're going to be talking about condo deconversions, a very interesting topic.
Super interesting.
And we're going to be talking about realtor gifts and how space tourism could come into play. How's it going today?
I'm doing all right, man. A little tired, kids keeping me up at night, thoughts keeping me up at night, creativity sometimes keeps you up at night. And that's really what I've been dealing with last night, man. I was just like, I was going to go to bed early and then all of a sudden I'm up till 1 o'clock and, there goes the day. So a little tired, but hanging in there. Things are starting to pick up. I think the market is going to start churning again. It depends on where you're looking, but we were in the summer months and then you can tell when things are starting to churn because 3 or 4 people reached out to me in 12 hours, so that's when all right, people are coming back to reality and they're ready to start moving again.
Well, they're going to start seeing houses, and those houses may have cameras in them. They may have hidden cameras. And our first article is from lendingtree.com entitled, "Nearly a third of home sellers admit to hidden camera use during showings." Now, Shawn, a lot of people these days, they have the doorbell cam, they have the Nest security camera. That's all fun. But this is more so saying that the cameras are hidden. And the article, it's a survey, a study done, says that the number one reason that some sellers are using hidden cameras are to understand what buyers do and don't like about the home so that they can make changes. That's 49% of the 105 sellers who used hidden cameras. What do you make of that?
That is crazy stuff. Now, you could see it 2 different ways. All right. One, it's people watching their own home. It's their own, it's their life and they're watching it. But secondly, people are coming into your home for private conversations. Yes, it's your home, but they want private conversations in there. So is that necessarily right? And, I could see it both ways. I would feel weird, now that you think about it, like somebody listening to my conversation, that's a true conversation that you don't think somebody's listening to. I think that's kind of a violation. You start thinking like, man, people are watching me all the time. I got to be careful what I say. And that's, the thing is that I want to bring up is that in our listing agreement, right? In our listing agreement that a seller signs, there's a paragraph that says, do you have recording equipment in the home? And you have to say yes or no. But, in the listing itself, there's no real disclosure portion in the listing to say, hey, is that question answered in the listing? No, there's no category to say, hey, yes, there is a recording system. You're being recorded. So actually I called our broker today and I was like, hey, what do you make of this? How do you feel about it? And she said, well, what you should do in that instance is disclose when they walk through the door that, hey, you're being recorded, which is interesting. And honestly, I've never had a seller recently, since that paragraph's been put into the listing agreement, I've never had a seller say, yes, I do have a recording system in here. Now that goes back to, okay, there's a recording system, but what if there's just a camera and you're listening? That's not the same thing, right? So there's this fine line of, are you recording? That's illegal. Are you just listening? That's not necessarily illegal, and it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I think if there's a way for you to hear a conversation, that's going to fall under the category for me. Like if you're able to hear, I know it says recording. But let's get into some of the other reasons why some sellers are using cameras. To gather information that would be useful during negotiations, 36%. And by the way, this survey is only 105 sellers who used hidden cameras. That's not a lot. There's not a lot of people surveyed. There was 3 out of 10 home sellers said that they used hidden cameras, which is a fair amount. But if you only are doing, I think like
small sample size.
I think a total, you divide by 33%. They quizzed about 350 sellers. So, small sample size. But another one, this is probably the most popular, or I shouldn't say most popular because it's third most popular, but what I would have thought was most common to ensure my home is safe during the showings. Because you hear all these stories about realtors or buyers, rifling through drawers and jewelry boxes.
Weird,
that one's 31%. To see what the real estate agent is saying about the home, 23%. And then I just always have a security camera on the property is 10%. So
yeah, and I have security cameras around my house, right? I think they're super useful. I have all the Nest stuff, and I watch it on my phone here and there, especially when you're away. We have the security system, but we also have the cameras, and it's fun to just honestly see what the weather's like, see who's walking up to you. I've had police show up to my house when I was away. My alarm was going off, so I understand, and it's a really good tool. But if you're selling your house, please make people aware that you're recording them, listening to them. I don't know. I just find it super creepy. And I was with you on that, where if I always took the recording system as, are you listening to us? Are you listening to people as they come through? You should disclose that.
Yeah. Right? What is the intention of recording system? I think it comes down to listening. And I think I have seen that in the MLS somewhere. Maybe they just wrote it in, or maybe it's not a mandatory field and you can just click it or not. But I think if you're in someone else's property, vacant or not, you should almost always operate under the assumption that someone is watching and or listening. And I know that may sound like, well, I can't be myself. I can't, whatever. But, more so in occupied properties, it's someone's house. Like there's a likelihood that you're being watched, and that's just the nature of the world that we live in. So.
Yeah, especially recently. I mean, the cameras and systems have ramped up, and it's so easy to install now. It's so simple, and everything's on your phone.
Sometimes
it's addicting.
Yeah, sometimes when I see a Nest Cam or when I see a camera, I want to pretend like I don't see it.
Yeah.
And then I'll just say something off the wall like, oh man, if only they, took out this fireplace, this property would be worth $100,000. Like just something, I can't think of a good example, but just something off the wall just to see if they would say anything.
Yeah. I remember the first couple times that I saw these, when they were new to the market, I didn't really understand what they were. And, I walked up and I was showing one and I just like made a weird face into the camera, and I'm like, those people can have a snapshot of me making a weird face into the thing, even though like I was just having fun with it. But like you don't realize that those people are watching you on their phone.
100%.
It's so funny.
They've paused their day to pull out their camera.
Like, look at this guy.
They're watching you.
Hey,
yeah,
I like to have fun sometimes.
Next time you go into, and it's more, I think if it's a vacant property, right, it's probably for security purposes, make sure, squatters don't break in or anything. But if it's an occupied property, and this is also saying hidden camera.
Yeah.
So not necessarily, hey, we have a baby cam or we have a nanny cam. This is like a hidden camera.
Yeah. That's a bit creepy. You can see all my cameras, and usually you can see, you know what's going on when you walk into a house. But yeah, hidden cameras, they can hide them in anything anymore.
Yeah.
So be careful when you're going through properties. I guess the lesson is be careful when you're going through properties. Don't divulge a lot of information, especially, pretend that they're walking around the house with you, right? Because if you're in an open house, or if you're going to a showing and you just see a house and you come out and there's another group sitting there, you're not going to start talking about the house, right? I always tell my clients, like, don't talk, don't say anything, right? Because you're giving away all your secrets. So think about that when you're walking through the property as well. Maybe don't divulge all your information and be so honest about properties.
It's like, would you say, I want this for above list price to the seller's face?
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
a conversation you have like in the driveway or like by the car.
That's right. So I would say leave your comments for afterwards.
All right, let's get into our next topic. This is from slate.com. And the title of the article is How Condo Buildings End. Aggressive developers looking for a way in, or desperate homeowners looking for a way out. And this is, on top of the wake of the Miami condo collapse. And the article is focused on Chicago, and specifically a few condo buildings. They actually look like pretty nice buildings. And the way I've been to Chicago. Chicago's great. I went in April, and it was like 70 degrees, which is almost unheard of. And a lot of Chicago buildings, well, it's an old city, so they were built a little bit older. So these specific buildings that are being referenced were built in, say, the I don't even know when, but think 60s, like 1960, call it 1960s. Even one of them was like 1980s. And they were built as apartments. And then as Chicago started getting built up and more, they call them yuppies, more and more yuppies.
So many times in that article, right?
Growing up in Arlington, we'd call people in Clarendon yuppies.
Yeah.
And then it turned into just millennials, me at Mr. Days. But yeah, they said yuppies, came to Chicago in the early 2000s, think like 2000, 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
So these apartments became condos. It wasn't a new condo, like a shiny new New York City condo building. This was an old apartment complex that became a condo. And then, unfortunately, over the years, the values never caught up to where they should have been. So because of the financial collapse and because of, lifestyle changes, it just didn't make sense to be condos anymore. And so now what ended up happening at multiple buildings is these condos were hit with very, very high maintenance bills, whether the condo board, deferred maintenance, or whether these, 40-year, 50-year-old buildings just required a lot of maintenance. Condo owners were kind of stuck and left to figure out, well, do they want to put in a tremendous amount of money where they may see a return in 40 years, but if you're only going to hold on to it for 4 or 5 years, you're going to be throwing away like $20,000 or $30,000. Or do you want to sell it to a developer? So what ended up happening is there were multiple buildings, and Shawn, these buildings, they're, some of them are 400 units. So we're not just talking about, a 2 or 3 or 20 unit conversion. These are selling for hundreds of millions of dollars. So, we always talk about new condos. Where are the new condos? We need new condos. And in this area, we've seen some condo conversions. Hey, apartments going to condos, or, hey, they're going to build them as apartments, but if the market's hot, they may go to condos. But in terms of the condo deconversion, what are your thoughts on this?
This is an amazing article. And to be honest, I sell a lot of condos. We sell a lot of condos. I've never really thought of the deconstruct of a condo, right? I have, but like not in a normal sense that it would actually happen. And like Matt was saying, we've seen a lot of condo conversions, apartment conversions. Eastview and Westview up in Ballston, they were both apartments that transfer. I mean, there was a lot. Ballston 880, there's a ton of them that were apartments that then decided to sell as condos, and they become the condo. So you as an owner are inheriting an older building. They might be newer units, but the foundation and everything is older. And this might be a precursor to other areas. Chicago might be the first in this, and this might snowball to other areas because you start thinking about what it costs to run a condo. And there's a lot of condos out there that aren't running very well. The management companies, if you've ever called a condo management company, they're impossible to get a hold of. And what does that say about their business dealings? Are they doing a great job? I don't know. I mean, but you've got to be smart about how much money that you're putting into reserves and things like that so that you can prepare for all of these big ticket items that are coming. And I think we were reading an article a couple weeks ago about, like, if your condo fees aren't increasing every year, you're probably not doing it correctly, because you should have an increase in condo fees almost every year because cost of living is going up and you're budgeting for future events, right? So, but going the opposite way. So one big example here, it's not a condo, it's a co-op. And we talk about it all the time because there's just like, what is going to happen to River Place, right? River Place is this building. It's a co-op that sits right in Roslyn. It's got the best plot of land. It's so valuable. There's 4 big buildings on this campus that do not own, the building and co-op do not own the land that it sits on. So they're on a land lease. That land lease is up in 2054. And those are the things that, like, that's the one that I always think about. I'm like, you might not want to buy there because in that instance, the buildings are going to be worth pretty much nothing. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. And is a developer going to pay you for those units, or are they going to say, well, you don't really own the land, so we're buying the land and we're just going to tear this down?
Yeah, Shawn makes a really good point, because you can buy, you know, your condo and live in your condo, but if the building as a whole or the land as a whole is falling apart, or there's a land lease, that's more of a one-off issue, then it's not really going to matter, because you're buying a depreciating liability. And getting into how this all happened and how it could happen, it looks like Chicago at one point required 75% of owners to approve the sale. So that's what you need. They since changed it to 85%. So if you've ever tried to get condo owners to vote for anything, it's very difficult to get you know, a supermajority or even 85%. And one thing that happened in terms of a developer coming in, before even initiating the deconversion, the developer came and started buying up almost 40% of the units. So at that point, you know, people that maybe already wanted to sell, it was a perfect opportunity for them to get out, perfect opportunity to get in. And then once you already have 40%, it's a lot easier to get, you know, 45% compared to 85%.
Yeah, it's an amazing thought that I you know, the way to get around that is I think now a lot of condos, which they should do, is put in clauses that can limit the number of investors that come into the units. And they're, you know, some of them cap them at like 35%. There's actually a couple buildings along the Orange Line that do have rental caps. So how many investors, how many units at one time can be rented out. You could see where that becomes a valuable tool in something like this. But yeah, a supermajority is very difficult to enact, and 85%. And that is the same as enacting some of these other laws, like trying to enact a rental cap in there. You have to have a supermajority to do so. But the deconstruct, and you have to think about everybody that lives in that condo, right? If you've ever tried to get people to agree on something with that vast amount of people, it's almost impossible, because, you know, you've got young people, you've got older people, you've got people that want to stay there and live out their life in this condo. Then you've got the people that want to sell in a year. And naturally, the people that want to sell in a year are going to say, yeah, let's do this. The people that want to live there forever are going to be like, no, this is my home. This is where I want to stay. So it's like, now you have to force somebody out, which is such an odd concept to me, you know? And it's like, think about that. Your condo board could vote you out.
Yeah.
And you could be gone.
You don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
You would have to sell.
So insane. I've never thought of it.
And the reality is, if you're in that situation, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to lose money on that. But there could be some people that actually make money, where the developer is going to buy your property for more than it's worth. Maybe you haven't, you know, been upkeeping it, but if you fall under the 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 600 square feet, you're going to get X amount, where if you had gone to the open market, you know, you might have gotten less. And Andy Friedman, who represents condo boards that are trying to find an exit strategy. I mean, this guy literally represents condos that are trying to do this. He was saying that units never sell for over $200,000 in this one building, and they were getting $250,000 with this deconversion. So it's not maybe a great solution, but you know, think about the maintenance costs of like a 40 or 50 year building. You know, you have a special assessment of $25,000-$30,000 per unit. Some people have lived there for 20 years. They're just not going to be able to have that payment. And, you know, if you could clear it out, get some cash for it and move on, the deconstruction may be the best opportunity for you.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like I said, I've never really thought about it. But, you know, these older buildings, they go through it all the time. You know, I would say we don't have in Arlington, we don't have many really old high rises or mid rises. We have, I think our oldest one is 1978, right? But we have older, smaller, low rise buildings that are built in the 40s. But most of our high rises are built after 1970, whatever.
Carlton and Brittany might.
Now that's South Arlington, right?
You're talking
South
about
Arlington.
I'm thinking,
I'm thinking along the Orange Line. But yes, you're right there.
Call it mid-70s.
Mid-70s, yeah. So, but this could start happening, you know, and especially as Arlington's the land value just becomes so expensive and valuable.
People want to rent here. They
Yeah.
want to rent. And this is such a transient area where it makes sense to have a lot of rentals. Everyone wants a new condo here, a new condo there. Well, there's a reason that a lot of the new buildings that you see are rentals.
Yeah, it's true. The transition of people, government jobs that just move them all over the place, it's very transient. And so most condo owners will own for like 3 or 4 years and then they're gone. You know.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our third topic. This comes to us from Inman.com, and the title of the article is Space Tourism Means Closing Gifts Could Be Out of This World. Richard Branson's successful trip to outer space, and I guess now Jeff Bezos' trip to outer space could mean that space travel is becoming a reality for the public. How long before it becomes a common perk offer to luxury buyers? So, Shawn, there's really two topics here. One is the whole essence of realtor gifts. And then the second is, what are you doing over the top, extravagant to your most exclusive, expensive white glove service clients? So, Shawn, let's first talk about realtor gifts. How do you just feel about the realtor gifts, giving your clients a gift at closing? What's your mindset there? What's your thought process? And do you believe in it, or do you think negative or nothing about it?
Yeah, it really depends on the deal, right? But most of my buyers, I will buy a gift. And that usually for me is something like maybe $100 to $150 to $200.
Why do you buy a gift, and what sort of gift are you getting?
First of all, I want to be nice to my buyers, thank them for the business. Secondly, I want them to remember me. Third, I want them to have something nice. So I think what I normally do, and I started doing this a couple of years ago, is I buy a lot of Nest products. So speaking of video recording and things like that, so Nest doorbells and Nest thermostats. Hey, every time they change their thermostat, they're thinking of Shawn, right? So I actually, Best Buy was having a big deal a couple weeks ago, and I went and bought like a ton of Nest doorbells and thermostats. And then you run into the buyers that the place already has that. So I'm like, all right, now what do I get? And then I started getting like speakers, outdoor speakers, fun things like that. But it's hard. I mean, what do you do for buyers? What do you get them? What are your thoughts on it? Like, what is your normal kind of course of action?
Yeah, and I've seen this topic posted a lot, especially on Realtor Facebook forums, which is always a non-productive conversation because people just go off the rails.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is like, we're in the customer service business. Yeah. What do the best service companies provide to you? Like, you go to Ritz-Carlton, what happens? Guy opens the door for you. Then you walk up to the front desk. You get a thing of champagne, like a glass of champagne. I never have felt tacky or, I've never felt bothered by that. I just have always felt this is an incredible experience. I went to the Outer Banks last year with my girlfriend, and, we stayed at this kind of rinky-dink, I don't know if it was a motel, but we booked on hotels.com, and in the text I said, can you, how people are like, can you, have like 6 M&Ms waiting for me or like in my initials.
They have to be all yellow.
Yeah. And I knew what I was getting myself into, but my girlfriend, she loves sheep. So I was like, can you have a picture of a baby sheep printed out and waiting for us on, the pillow? So silly.
Yeah.
But it was like the smallest ask. It's like, all you need to do, print out a picture of a sheep, put it on the pillow. I get a reply, sorry, we don't do that. What? You don't have a computer? You don't have a printer?
And
you
3 minutes?
So that was indicative of the rest of our stay, which was riddled with issues. And you don't need, to send your buyer to outer space. You don't need to give them a Nest therm. You don't need to do all this stuff. But how does it feel when you do?
Oh, yeah.
How does it feel when you do provide that extra white glove service?
And they're not expecting it, right? And we're at closing, and then I'll put the bag over, and they'll look through, and they're like, oh my God, I was looking for one. I was going to get one of these, And I think of things that they're going to probably want to do to the house, right? They're probably at some point going to want to get a Nest thermostat or a Nest or whatever brand camera. So that's what you have to think about. Something that kind of pulls the personal in with the home. I don't know. I've heard all kinds of things, and it's you know, I rack my brain. You know, a lot of times people give them wine and things like that, but that's kind of played out, I think, a little bit. You know, sometimes I will, if I didn't do anything else, I will send gifts after the fact. So it would be like wine gifts, like a wine of the month, and it comes for 3 months.
Yeah.
I've done that a few times, depending on the buyer again. And
so getting into this article, this agent from the Sirhan team in New York, Niall Lundgren, I looked him up. He's got the same haircut as me, and he wears cool suits. This guy is an awesome dude. I want to like reach out to him or something, but he's saying that adventure perks are on the rise. You know, he works on the ultra high end, and you know, right now the price tag for Virgin Galantic is $250,000. So obviously, you know, we're not going to pay for this for when we're selling a $250,000 condo. But if my man Niall, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, Niall Lundgren, if he's selling a $20 or $30 million penthouse, you know, hey, maybe his thing
better
is,
not get him a Nest thermostat.
yeah. Hey, you buy with Niall and you go to the moon.
Yeah.
Like you go to outer space.
Exactly.
Like that's what we do.
I think that's
and
a cool
so
idea.
his whole thing is like adventure perks. Like, how can I create this I don't know if he's saying how can I create this once in a lifetime opportunity, but from what the article displays, it looks like he is all about creating something that no other agent can provide, and that's really got my attention.
Yeah, I mean, if we were making that kind of money, that would be a really fun thing to do. One of my other thoughts was, you know, I've been looking at investment properties and beach properties, and that's kind of my next game, is to buy a couple of beach properties at some point. And then they become, hey, why don't you guys go enjoy 3 days or 3 nights at my place or whatever, right? So that is something that I want to do in the future. I want to have these perks, and I think that would be like so memorable. And then they're going to be like, hey, what about that beach house?
The reality, and the reason we're having this conversation is not to say, okay, I live in Nebraska, how can I get my clients to the moon? No, it's how can you do something special? So maybe you do have a lake house or a mountain house or a beach house, and it's an adventure. It's something that you can provide that will be an experience for your buyers, something that they're not expecting.
Right.
And, you know, it's more than a bottle of wine or a bottle of champagne.
That's right. It's amazing. And they're not even expecting it. And that's the key, right? Not expecting it, and then you hit them with it at the end, and they're like, oh, my gosh, that was amazing. Not only was your service outstanding, you were the man. Thank you for this amazing gift. Let's go to the moon.
I love realtor gifts. I don't get excited about, you know, branded like Cutco or whatnot, but I think if there's a way, like, who's going to get upset about who's going to get a gift and get upset, or hear about someone else and be upset? So, all right, guys, would love to know your thoughts and comments. This is the part of the show where you hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already. That was Sellers Spying on Buyers, Condo Deconversions, and Space Tourism. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.